Hey, you've got a piece of property you want to sell. You know that owner financing it is an option, but is that right for you? First thing you got to do is understand the investment. When you owner finance a property, you're the bank. So you're getting your money a month at a time or a quarter at a time. It's dribbling in. So if you've got a lot of cash tied up in a property, or you think you may need a lump of cash in the near term, owner financing might not be right for you, because that money is going to stay tied up in your property and you're only going to get it back that little bit at a time. Hey, the second thing you got to do is consider the risks. When you bring somebody in on your property as a buyer and they're owner financing it, they're treating that property like it's theirs. So if there's a house on that property, is that house getting torn up? Are they taking care of things the way that you would? If you've got timber on the property, is it being cut and sold outside the terms of the agreement or against your will or unknown to you? 1,000 things can go wrong on a piece of property when you put somebody else on it. So you got to consider those risks. One thing that I do when I owner finance properties, I never owner finance anything with good merchantable timber on it. I just don't do it. And I know you say, Pat, you can protect that. You put it in the contract, or there are UCC filings in place to protect the timber. Okay, protect it from whom? Honest people, yeah. But there are unscrupulous people out there all over this planet, and there are definitely unscrupulous loggers out there who will come in and cut that timber. They'll never check title, and even if they do, and they see what's there, they're still going to get in and out, and you got timber that's gone. So that's one personal thing for me, is I never own or finance property that's got something on it that can be permanently damaged or that can disappear. I just don't do it. I recently sold a piece of property under owner finance, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute, but this property had already had the timber cut. There's no houses or structures on it. There's really not much they could do to destroy or tear this place up. So you got to consider the risk. Hey, number 3, really important, understand your state laws. What does your state allow and disallow in regards to land contracts, bond for deeds, owner financing? What can you do in your state? Spend a little time and maybe just a few dollars. Go sit down with a real estate attorney somewhere that you can look eye to eye and ask him what you can and cannot do in owner financing property in your state. Here we use mortgages. In your state, you probably use a deed of trust. Here we can use bond for deed and lease purchase. Bond for deed has to be done a very specific way. What about your state? You got to understand those things or you'll get yourself in a bind, especially if the deal goes sideways in a year, 2, 3 years down the road and you're having to get that property back. You've got a tenant or a landowner out there who doesn't want to give it back. What do? Make sure you understand your state laws and make sure you use the right document. Listen, I ran across a nice paper that really summarizes a lot of the things I've just talked about in terms of different states and different requirements for documents. I haven't researched every footnote in it or all the bibliography to track down every source. So you can look at it and make your own decision, but if you'll email me, I'll simply just shoot you the PDF. My email's down in the comments. Just say, hey Pat, send me that document on owner financing. I'll shoot it to you and it may be helpful to you. It's helpful to me. Hey, the next few points are based on a property I recently owner financed myself. So I'm going to tell you what I did, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of how I try to practice what I preach, and maybe this will be helpful to you. Number 4, I got full price. Now I had the property for sale. Somebody could come along and make an offer and I would have negotiated a lower price, a cash out price. But these people came along and wanted to owner finance this tract. And so I worked it out and said, sure, but I got full price. So that was number 1. The second thing I did, which is point 5 in our video here, is I got a very fair interest rate for me. They quickly agreed to it. It's higher than the bank is currently loaning right now. The logic is if they could go get their own financing at a bank, or if they wanted to go get their own financing at a bank, they're more than happy to. I'm going to get a higher interest rate because I'm carrying more risk. And it's a fair interest rate. It's not some outrageous usury kind of interest. It's very fair, but it's higher than the bank. I also put in my contracts, this is not one of my points, but it's important here, there's no prepayment penalty. And I make it clear to the folks, hey, if in a year or two you want to go to the lender and get a lower interest rate if you can, and just come and buy me out, refinance the property, great. You'll lower your interest rate, I get cashed out, and it's a fair deal, and there's no prepayment penalty. I don't penalize them for paying the thing off early. I want them to. Number 6, I detail my agreement real carefully and very precisely. Now, this particular deal, I used a lease purchase agreement with an option to buy. They exercised the option immediately when they signed it. That was the whole purpose of the deal. It stipulates the number of years that they're going to pay this out, the amortized principal interest payment every month. It's got all the details in there about insurance if needed. There's really not any insurance on this property because there's no structures on it that I'm having to protect. Details things about what they can and can't do on the property. It's got all the information in there about when they do pay it off, how I give them a deed to the property that gets recorded so it's just rock solid in their name. It's got every detail in there. It's late on payments and how we cure that, or if they completely default, what goes on there. It's an 8 or 10 page document, but it's got all of the details because this is a long-term deal. Document things very well in your contracts or in your conveyance instruments so that people down the road, long after you and I may be gone, can pick up the trail and keep this moving forward. Hey, the last thing I'll tell you, point number 7, if you want to own or finance property, be prepared for a problem. Now, chances are these people that came in and bought this property from me, they gave me a good down payment. They're great people. They're paying on time. We've got a very fair agreement. It's crystal clear. Things can still happen. So you got to be prepared for that. You got to understand you may have to take the property back. And in doing so, you got to follow certain procedures depending on the kind of documents you use. That's why it's important. Go all the way back to the beginning of this video when I said go sit down with a real estate attorney, understand what your state will allow you to do and not do, and how do you foreclose? How do you evict? How do you get your property back? You got to plan that at the beginning, not at the end. Know exactly how to get your property back before you get in a deal, because there are very complicated procedures in some places based on the kind of documents you use. So understand how to use that. Do it the right way and be prepared for things to go wrong. Other information about selling your property, there's some videos right there. Check them out.